You're listening to the Fan2Fan Podcast, and this is part 2 of our discussion of the Friday the 13th film franchise. Except this time, we're digging into more than just the movies. We're talking about the video games, the fan films. We're picking our favorite Jason Voorhees, our favorite movies in the series, and more. Here we go. You're listening to the Fan2Fan Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Bernie Gonzalez. With me today, fellow co-host Pete Charbonneau and returning guest, Josh Spiegel. You may know Josh from his YouTube channel, Movie Timelines, with over 50,000 subscribers. Josh does deep dives into movie franchises that have multiple movies. Nightmare on Elm Street, the Halloween movies. He even tackles Stephen King adaptations, Christmas horror movies, John Carpenter films. Josh is also the author of the book, Timelines of Terror, The Fractured Continuities of Horror Film Sequels. It's published by McFarlane. Josh is kind enough to return. We talked in a previous episode about the Friday the 13th franchise. We went over how we all first experienced Friday the 13th, the first movie we saw, if we saw it in a theater, if we saw it on VHS, if we saw it on cable. We talked about the evolution of the Friday the 13th franchise and Jason, how the movies have kind of taken a life on their own, how they've been a product of their times, from the 80s to the 90s to the aughts. And with so many films in the franchise, and with, of course, Hollywood looking at existing IP, there was no doubt that there was going to be a remake, a reboot at some point. And in 2009, we got exactly that, the Friday the 13th remake, sequel, reboot, whatever you want to call it. So Josh, talk about maybe not enjoying it. So you weren't a fan of the reboot then, Josh, huh?
No, I do not like the reboot.
Did you know a young boy drowned here? The counselors weren't paying attention. He was my son. His name was Jason. And today is his birthday. Please don't hurt me.
Friday the 13th. Rated R. Starts Friday.
My comment about the reboot that I made, I think in a dead last episode, is that the reboot is, to me, like when you watch, when you watch American Idol, have you ever watched American Idol? I'm not a fan of that show. And the reason why I'm not watching the show is because even when they're singing a song that I love, it's like you have this singer goes up there and they have these very eloquent voices and they sing these songs and they're hitting all these notes and they're singing all the right notes. It's this song that you love in the right notes, and some of them are even bigger, more grandiose versions of those notes than you've heard before. And you can just tell that the person singing the song doesn't even know the words that they're singing. They just know the notes that they're supposed to hit for that song to sound pretty. And that's how I feel that the Friday the 13th, 2009 is. It's like a bunch of studio heads got in a room and said, what do people like about Friday the 13th? And then they wrote it all down and then they just shot it without an ounce of soul, without a tiny instance of what made that stuff great in the first place. And it just feels robotic. There's no chances. There's no risks. It's just regurgitated versions of things that you've seen before. And like, what is somebody once said to me, it's just like, oh yeah, man, it's Jason's so brutal. He's like running after people. I'm like, Jason ran for 4 movies. It's not like that. It's not something original that they did that they were like, oh, what if Jason ran? Wouldn't that be cool? It's like, no, it's an empty movie to me. And even right now I'm trying to think about things that happened in it. And I've got nothing.
That was maybe the most eloquent review of the Friday the 13th.
I can't. I was going to chime in. I can't top it with the American Idol reference. I think just nails it perfectly.
But to be fair, with a lot of those Platinum Dunes remakes, there was something that was a little lackluster that felt like the sepia tone and the MTV style editing. But again, this is where, to that point, I'm like, devil's advocate. They're still a product of their time because that's how all those movies looked when they were released. Movies like Joyride and Jeepers Creepers, it's like, yeah, they were competing with that in the box office, so they looked like that.
Well, my problem with the remake was the cynical, like, I forget, it was like the first 30 minutes. I think it was even like all pre-credit stuff where it's basically just rehashing at least the first two movies, maybe even the third one. But again, like what you're saying, Josh, they're clearly like checking off all the boxes. Like, oh yeah, here's where he gets the hockey mask. Oh yeah, here's where Mrs. Voorhees gets decapitated. Oh, it's like all the stuff that you loved from the series. It's all in here. It's like, yeah, but we've seen it, and we want to see it again. So yeah, I thought it was very cynical, and I was kind of glad. Well, not kind of. I was very glad to see that it tanked and it kind of ended the whatever as they had to continue the franchise.
But that's the thing, though. It didn't tank. It made a ton. It was very profitable, and they had intended to make a sequel to it. And there was like rumors of a sequel that went around for a while, and just for one reason or another. Was it the lawsuit that got in the way of having that continue? Because I know that that's been tied up for many, many years now. No, the lawsuit wasn't the main reason for it. I believe it was the sort of backlash, the fan backlash to sort of food their heels on it. Yeah, here you go. The budget was $19 million, box office $92 million. Extremely profitable, but just the sequel just ended up in limbo. I think that a lot of people just weren't happy. The fans weren't happy with the direction that it took. And I think even behind the scenes, like the studio wasn't happy with where it was going to go. But on the Wikipedia page that I'm looking at right now, it just says that they were set to release a sequel in 2010, but the sequel was pulled from the release date and just delayed indefinitely, and just there was no reason given. They just did it. In 2011, they said that there was a finished script for the sequel, and then in 2013, they lost the rights.
Not to belabor this, but like, they made nothing against the actor that plays Jason in that remake, but like he was like 6'6" or something like that. Like the guy was like a superhero behemoth. For what I'm looking for, and this is my personal opinion, for what I'm looking for in a horror or movies of that genre is like, well, you can be, 5'10" and be brutal. Like it's kind of like how you portray that on screen. But I just feel like it was just robbing the character of a certain menace that, again, like when you go the earlier ones, like, part 2, he's not bigger than Paul. Like Paul's like beating him up. And so like, to me, there's something more intriguing and more interesting about that you've got like this killer that doesn't have everyone else overmatched. Like there's a push and pull, but like how do they get the upper hand type thing? That to me has always been more interesting than like, oh, let's hire a 6'7" guy that weighs 300 pounds and have him like running at people. Like, okay, yeah, well, that's intimidating, but I don't know if that's necessarily scary from like a movie standpoint.
If you watch the earlier movies where Jason is rather human sized, because even in part 4, he's big, but he's not massive. Like when he's fighting Rob in the basement, he's not like towering over Rob. He's just like a little bit bigger than him. And in those movies, it makes sense that he stays in the shadows and picks people off one by one. It makes sense. In the later movies, like, you just wonder, like, wait, why isn't he just walking in there and slaughtering everybody all at once? Like, he can. Nobody can stop him. He's unkillable, and he's massive. Why wouldn't he just walk in there? And yeah, the 2009 version, like, none of those guys could take him out. None of them could. He could have walked into the house at any time and it's been like, boom, 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 boom. Everybody's dead. Walk out. I like the idea of the smaller, more human feeling Jason, the guy that's a little bit more cunning and like coming up with plans on like how to isolate people and take advantage of the situation. This person's off by themselves. And it's one of the reasons why I like 6 so much is 6 isn't all in one area. Jason's traveling from here to here to here. So it makes a little bit more sense that he's not just like walking in and killing everybody and leaving.
When full moons rule the evening sky, Camp Crystal Lake begins to die. With young and able counselors slain, there's just one boy that will remain. His name is Jason, and these are his days. It's Friday the 13th on USA. Just pray that Jason's not after you as we begin Friday the 13th, Part 2, next on USA.
A few things I wanted to chat about with the franchise. Only major like slasher franchise that I can think of that has had like a good crossover with the Freddy versus Jason, and then in Jason Goes to Hell, even though, and Josh, maybe you can speak to this better than I can, like the Necronomicon being there, like there's like attempts, at least with Friday, maybe it could be in the Evil Dead. And he does that in the comics, and and then he even faces Leatherface. But that at least there's like this attempt to like kind of lean into the world of horror. And because he's on the Mount Rushmore, you totally make sense. People want to see Freddy versus Jason, so let's give them that. That's something that, again, maybe goes back to the higher entertainment value of Friday. This is what people want. Like, let's do this. This is cool. Let's have fun with it.
Yeah, I will tell you one thing that people don't like that I say. I'm not a huge fan of the sneaking of the Necronomicon there into the cabin in Jason Goes to Hell. And the whole idea that the director of the movie says that Jason is just a version of a Deadite. No, he's not. No, he's not. It's not the same thing. And like people take it as like canon or whatever like that. And it's like, is anything in a Friday the 13th movie canon? Come on now. But yeah, I mean, I do like I like the idea of a shared universe. The notion of Jason tampering with the Necronomicon, I guess, would be interesting if it was handled well. But I mean, first of all, like the Necronomicon was in a cabin in Tennessee. It was not in Camp Crystal Lake, and it was written in Kandarian.
I don't think you were looking at the activities schedule, Josh, when they were in the Camp Crystal Lake, because one of them, needlepoint, different knots in how to learn how to read Kandarian.
Your own Necronomicon.
A new reign of terror begins on Friday the 13th. An old antique dealer makes a pact with Satan and seals it with his own death.
And the antiques remain cursed.
Now the curse begins for the three who must retrieve his legacy of evil. Join these unsuspecting victims on a mission into nightmare. Friday the 13th, the series. The terror continues next week.
So outside of the movies, guys, any comments on the TV series, the NES game, either the original NES one, You and Your Friends Are Dead, or the modern day, the modern version of the game?
I do love the TV series. The TV series is so much fun and goofy, and I know that it has zero connection to the films whatsoever. It's its own thing, but man, what a fun, weird trip that show is. It's such a good time.
You know, when the TV show came out, I was still of the age where I wanted more Jason. So when I heard that Jason was going to have no part, I was like, yeah, you have no part of being the film series. I couldn't get into it. I feel like I would appreciate it much more now.
You and Your Friends Are Dead.
As far as the video games, I think I played them all. There was even a game on the Commodore 64, Friday the 13th, that was just awful. Where
that's the one I've played.
Oh, really?
That one?
Yes.
It's weird. Like Jason is like disguised as a counselor, so you don't know it's Jason until you hack him with like. But if you had him with an axe, and then like the character would have like a black shirt and be like, "Oh, there, it's Jason." I have no idea how you were supposed to win the game. You just kind of wandered around the map, and you could go into different homes and things like that. But I do remember enjoying it at the time in the 80s, but I will say I really enjoyed the latest video game, the Friday the 13th game, which I think you could probably still play offline. I want to say that it was pulled again because of the legal issue, which kind of robbed it of most of its playability, because I think the fun was in doing the multiplayer part of it. But the gameplay could be a little clunky. But what I will say is that it had a tremendous ability to ratchet up tension in a video game, which I don't play a ton of video games, but I thought that was very impressive. I know Tom Savini was involved in that. He came up with a demon style looking Jason that was one of the playable Jasons that you could do. So the basic premise for anyone that is not familiar, 7 or 8 people can play at a time in a round. One person is randomly selected to be Jason. You could pick Jason from part 2, from part 3, part 4. They're all even the NES Jason, so you could run around in like the purple.
Nice.
And then you were basically tasked with trying to kill all the other people who were counselors. And you would go around the map, and there's some different maps. Higgins Haven from part 3 was one of the maps. If you were a counselor, you could either hide, you could try to build traps to slow him down. And eventually what you really tried to do was to repair a car or something to get to an exit part where the police were waiting, where you could escape. And if you escaped, you got X amount of points. Jason killed you. Obviously, there were like very grisly, gory ways that you could be killed. So it was wildly fun. And like when you're hiding and trying not to make noises and the person who's Jason is kind of walking through the cabin and hoping that you're not discovered. Like I said, like there was some really great tension that built up. And again, like some of the controls were clunky, but it was a fun game. You know, they all lasted like 15 minutes a pop, so you didn't have to invest a lot of time in it. So I give them credit. I'm blanking on the name of the company that did the.
Did they do a Texas Chainsaw Massacre style game in kind of like a similar graphics?
They did didn't they also? I think they also did the Evil Dead one too.
It seems like the success for those games were them leaning into the original spirit of the movies and what people enjoyed about them, and then being able to translate that into a video game.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, like I remember the opening screen having kind of like the 80s VHS, like tracking stuff coming up. And then I think they got the license to the music.
You mean the disco music from part 3? Is that what you meant?
Oh, if the movie was entirely the disco music from part 3, I'd probably still be playing it right now. I wouldn't be talking.
Disco ball from the boat from Manhattan, bring it all together. That's it right there. That's what you want.
Give me a little Harry Manfredini disco beat.
That's right. One thing that I wanted to bring up, Josh, because you brought it up in your timeline video, the non-for-profit, the fan-funded films. They're not affiliated with the franchise, but I think they're worth mentioning. The Never Hike Alone that has actor Tom Matthews, who played Tommy Jarvis in it.
Hey guys, it's day 12 and a beautiful one at that. So today's mission, find the lake. This terrain's looking a little treacherous, but I just have to make my way.
Nothing's stopping me.
All right, I'll check in with you guys later. Kyle, out.
Never Hike Alone in the Snow, that was the sequel, which is kind of cool because I don't think we've ever seen Camp Crystal Lake in the winter. So I'm like, that's a cool aesthetics. That's awesome. And I just saw that they released a third movie in this like fan-made franchise, Never Hike Alone 2, and it was made by Womp Stomp Films, and it's got, by their comment, Crystal Lake's haunted son, Tommy Jarvis, played by, Tom Matthews, the actual actor who's all but given up on his search for the long-lost Jason Voorhees. But you brought the first two up in your timelines, and did you watch them? Did they make an impression on you that you kind of said, hey, you know what, these are worth noting, you know, as part of like not the official canon, but official enough to be, you know, in movie timelines? There's
been a bunch of rather noted Friday fan films at this point, and I've watched a few of them, and some of them are pretty good. Some of them are not so great. But there was one that was actually a direct sequel to The New Blood, featuring Tina, and even had Terry Kaiser returning to play the Doctor. Obviously, he was a ghost, like a vision. But I included those ones just mainly because so many people had talked about them and saw that as being like the true successor to Friday the 13th. And I'm not as enamored with them as I feel other people are. I thought they were fine. I liked the look of Jason. Thought was pretty cool. But fan films are always kind of interesting, and I almost wish that I could watch more of them. But they're always kind of intriguing because it's the people that are unfettered by the studios. And what's funny is, God, I feel like I'm going to rankle some feathers here. But it's like every time that there's a studio of a franchise piece out, I feel like a lot of people are just kind of like, well, the people that made it aren't fans. And if the fans had this in their hands, the product would be so much better and so much more interesting and so much truer to the franchise. And then you see the things that the fans make and you're like, maybe not.
Good conundrum you brought up, Josh, because like when I see some of these fan films, I think there's a way where I'm like incredibly appreciative that someone's super passionate, not just to make a movie, but like to your point, there is a production behind it. There seems to be talent. Like there is effort that, you know, goes beyond the charm of kind of like a backyard type movie that you make with your buddies, which I love too. But then like when you see some of these films, there is a gloss on them. But then there's that other part of me, like the other swinging of the pendulum, where I'm like, man, I can appreciate that you guys are making a fan film. What if you use all this amazing talent to make your own thing? You put this up on YouTube, you fan funded it. Other fans gave their hard-earned money to make this. I love that. Also, what if you just made your own slasher?
Yeah, and I mean, I think Never Hike Alone is cool, and I enjoy watching it, but I don't think I've ever viewed it as being like as good as or being a part of the series of films. I don't know. I mean, I just never understand why. Yeah, it's just a lot of money to spend on something that really you can't do much with because obviously copyright. So
have you checked these out, Pete? Have you heard of them?
I've heard of them, and I heard that they had gotten good word of mouth. I started watching, I think, Never Hike Alone, but I haven't caught the whole thing. But I was definitely intrigued, especially when I heard that they got Tom Matthews back. So again, I was like, well, that's really interesting that they were able to generate enough interest in this that it got into Tom Matthews' ear. And he was like, yes, I'd like to be involved in something like this. And I think, what a great bit of fan service on his part to kind of come back and give a little bit of cred to the project. But I think it's great that people are this passionate and that they want to kind of create either a little alternate universe or fix some things that they might thought need fixing from the franchise. But I think it also speaks to how hard it is to really make films and movies and have them work and be not even successful, but just like out there. Like, it takes a lot to, from writing to the casting, like there's so much that goes into these things, and to do like a fan film is fantastic, and I'm all for it. I would encourage anyone else out there that has that vision to see it to fruition. But I don't know that these are going to replace anything from the series or get that kind of heft that maybe that they thought they would. And maybe their time is better served to create something original, but at the same time, maybe this is their gateway into moving on to that next project that will be an original slasher or something that's not tied to a previous franchise. Maybe they wanted to get this done. It's creativity, and I'm all about creativity.
I mean, honestly, those guys should just go make like an Amityville sequel or something.
I should. There's
not enough of them out there, so we need more. Yes,
we need to get to 100 Amityville sequels, and
that's right.
They could do their part to get us there.
So to kind of wrap up Friday the 13th, the franchise, 12 films over the
12 films,
12 films over the course of 30 years. Like you mentioned in your videos, Josh, sometimes the calendars for these don't match up with the real world, and that's okay. But you go to your VHS shelf and you're picking up one Friday the 13th movie to pop into your VHS. Which one is it?
So I've got a sentimental favorite, and I got like what I think is the most entertaining. I think the most entertaining and the most Friday the 13th of Friday the 13th movies has to be the final chapter.
Jason is back. 3 times before, you have felt the terror, known the madness, lived the horror. But this is the one you've been screaming for. Because Friday, April 13th will be Jason's unlucky day. Friday the 13th, the final chapter, rated R, under 17, not admitted without parent.
I think it has a little bit of everything, bridges the gap from what would come after to what came before. And you've got Crispin Glover dancing, and that right there alone is worth the price of admission. So I think that's probably the best one in my opinion. My nostalgic and sentimental favorite is part 3.
On Friday, August 13th, join Jason in his woods, if you dare. Friday the 13th, part 3 in Super 3D. Jason, you can't fight him, you can't stop him, and now you can't even keep him on the screen. Friday the 13th, part 3 in Super 3D. A new dimension in terror from Paramount Pictures, rated R, under 17, not admitted without parent.
It's not the first one that I saw, but that was the one that always kind of cemented it as me being like a huge fan of the franchise. And I just remember being over my friend Mike Cognato's house in the wood panel basement after school one day, where he's like, we're just going to watch all the Friday the 13th movies. And at the time, I think there were 3 or 4. So that's what we did. 3 just kind of sunk in for me. All the iconic reasons, like with him getting the hockey mask, being a hockey fan, being a hockey player. I was just like, oh yeah, well this lines up nicely with my interest.
That's a good pick. I would go with 3 too. I think the part about Jason Lives, there's something about it that I love because it feels like it's the one where they kind of leaned into and said, we know what we are. Appreciate the awareness of the franchise. But yeah, sentimental. I got to go with 3. I feel like that's where Jason became Jason. if it's on AMC sometime in October and it's like halfway through, I'm going to finish watching it. Josh, what about you?
I love 6.
They thought the nightmare was dead and buried. They were wrong. Jason lives.
Happy Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th, Part 6. Jason lives.
Starts August 1st.
When you're making the 6th part of a franchise, and that movie does such a fantastic job of, we're doing something that's familiar, but we're doing it in a kind of an unfamiliar way to kind of give you something different. They throw in some humor, not so much that it becomes a horror comedy, but an appropriate amount of humor. The only thing that I wish is that, because I felt like the deaths were a little more sanitized, a little safer in terms of the deaths. But it's the most fun you're getting, kind of switching the game up, and you're not getting that same thing. Because that's my issue with a lot of the sequels is I love part 2, but part 2 is just the same movie as part 1. I love part 3, but it's essentially the same movie as part 1 and part 2. And part 4 is exactly the same movie as part 3 until the last 15 minutes. The fact that a lot of them just feel like retreads, even though they're really enjoyable watches, 6 is the first time I'm sitting down and feel like this doesn't feel like any of the other ones at all. And that's what I love about it. I'm going to that almost every time.
Good. That's a great pick. Before we wrap it up, I think we'd be remiss if I'd like to get everyone's thoughts on, do you have a favorite Jason portrayal?
I don't know if I have like a favorite portrayal, like the actor that's in the suit, but I definitely have a favorite look of Jason. The design of the Jason in part 7 in The New Blood, we're going to show you all of the deterioration that he's had being in the water. But not only that, but we're going to show you all the wounds that he's gotten. Like, we're going to show you the machete mark in the face. We're going to show you the machete mark in the shoulder. We're showing you all of that, and you can see it. And it's really cool. The detail that is paid to how he looks, and like that it looks like the Jason that you're familiar with from the old ones, but a zombie version of it. And he looks so menacing and so mean and so like emotive that it really defines that character to me. That's my Jason. That's the way I'll always view him. He looks so cool, more of a character.
Just hanging out with his spine out.
That is a cool look. Yeah, the zombie Jason. Yeah, I'd go with like the Ted White final chapter. There's just something about that one that I like. It's like right on the cusp before you get into maggots. You still kind of have a little bit of that, like, still the kid that pulled over the canoe. It's that kid, but he's older and he's been living in the woods and he's been still a little bit of a hunter before he became, the WWE wrestler that he becomes later.
I go with 3 again. Richard Brooker is my favorite. I thought he gave Jason a menace in part 3, but I feel like in part 3, like there's a cunningness to him that you don't see in part 2, and I like the part 2 portrayal as well. But there's just something about that part 3, like he's got a purpose behind what he's doing there. But I've always just come back to that one as being my favorite. So Richard Brooker is my guy.
I've seen enough horror movies to know any weirdo wearing a mask is never friendly.
Don't go in there!
What are you trying to do? Kill me?
The Friday the 13th Marathon continues next, part of AMC Fear Fest.